Good morning, and welcome to another episode 11 of Morning Buzz with the Energy Guy. That should have woke you up. Speaking of waking up, really, who needs coffee when you have Morning Buzz with the Energy Guy? I do. I like my coffee. I got a nice tall cup of Java right over here. I'll be sipping on during the podcast today. As a matter of fact, I'll need it because I was a little foggy this morning, and I thought to myself, "What am I missing this morning?" I thought, you know what? I didn't take my vitamins, so I reached over to the candy jar and grabbed my standby Hershey's milk chocolate candy bar, and that's helped a little bit. But the coffee is really, really going to put me over the top. Wow, I can't believe how quickly these weeks go by. Morning Buzz with the Energy Guy is a podcast focused on energy efficiency for the most part, and we'll talk about different things. Sometimes we'll throw in a little political discussion, particularly when the legislature is in session in Santa Fe. We'll talk about bills affecting electric utilities and things like that. But again, for the most part, it's energy efficiency and basically how I can help you save money. Tom Moore, Farmers Electric, headquartered out of Clovis, New Mexico, serving the high plains of eastern New Mexico and far west Texas. I say West Texas because we have a few irrigation accounts over into Texas. Not many. I think we've got 100 accounts, 100 meters. And system-wide, we have over 14,000 meters. All right. So in listening to the show, this is a life hack. In listening to the show last week, my son says, you can speed that up a little bit. And I was like, how's that? You just hold your button at the top. There's one way you can do it. You can just go in and into settings and change. So I was listening to it on YouTube. Of course, we're on different platforms. We're on YouTube, Spotify podcast. We're on Apple podcast. But anyway, I was listening to it on YouTube, and sure enough, I put my thumb on the top where kind of our logo is for Morning Buzz with Energy Guy, and it sped it up like 200%. And lo and behold, I sounded more like Ben Shapiro and a lot less like Cousin Jed. So I was excited about that. I don't know how Ben Shapiro does it. Not only has he got an IQ that's off the charts, he just thinks so quickly. Maybe that's it. I'm lacking in the IQ department. So today we're going to talk about cold temperatures. They're going to be here before we know it. We're in our first week. Well, I guess Monday's Labor Day, so we'll be in our first week of September. And that's when we want to start thinking about what we can do to lower our electric bill as we go into the colder months. And, it's not too soon to start thinking about that because it'll be here before we know it. And we want you to save a little money. So cold temperatures are just around the corner. An old man winter, I understand, is expected to be particularly harsh this year. Maybe not. And our members and just the public in general, whoever listens to this show is probably concerned about that. And of course, you want to stay warm. You don't want to sacrifice that. But if you heat with electricity, natural gas, propane, wood, or a combination of these things, these tips could help you out. So the first one I have here is lower the thermostat. Now, I do this. A lot of folks don't, but I feel like I need to because here at work I'm one of the guys that takes the calls from members concerned about their high usage. And one of the first things I might ask them in the dead of winter is like, hey, what is your thermostat set on, particularly if they're heating with electricity? I say, where's your thermostat? And they're like, well, it's at 74. And I said, that's a little much, I think. The Department of Energy suggests 68 degrees, and so that's where I have mine set. And it takes some getting used to, no doubt about it. And I understand completely if at first you say, oh, goodness, it's cold in here, particularly if you have a draft and you haven't, sealed those drafts up properly with either silicone caulk or, some kind of weather stripping. I understand that. But it's something you have to acclimate to. But there's a few things you can do, and what that 68 degrees represents is every degree above 68 you choose to set your thermostat, you risk increasing the amount it costs to heat your home by 8%. Now, I'm not talking about your overall bill, 8%. I'm talking about that portion that's attributed to heating. 8% per degree. So I'm saying you need to set it at 68 and, dress in layers. I don't know. I mean, this is no joke. I have gone to homes where the consumer member has called and said, we're freezing in the house. We've got $300 a month electric bill. Can you help us out? And I go to the door, and these little kids come running up the door in bare feet. I'm like, okay. If I was freezing in my house and I wanted to save a little money by lowering the thermostat, I might want to put some socks or some house shoes or something on the kiddos. But that's kind of beside the point. Those of you that have heat pumps, I was going to say you could actually drop your temperature even lower when you're away from the house. Now you don't want to turn it off or down too much. Let's say you just kick it down to 64 degrees. Well, that's going to save quite a bit while you're away from the house. Say you're at work. Say you work 8 to 5. And you come home at 5 and it's 64 degrees in your house and maybe the heater's just kicked in, but you've dropped 4 degrees since you left the house at 8 or right before 8. If you have a heat pump, please raise your temperature on your thermostat by 2 degrees increments, because if you do anything more than that, it will likely kick on your emergency heat, which uses a lot more electricity. It can actually use, say, up to 3 to 4 times more electricity to heat. Now, what you're telling, if you do it, say you go from 64 to 68, 4 degree differential, and you go from 64 to 68, you are telling the thermostat it is an emergency. I want my house warm and I want it warm now. So what does it do? It kicks on your emergency heat if you're all electric using a heat pump. Okay. It will bypass your heat pump. Your heat pump only uses, on average, around 5,000 watts, 5 kW. Where your heat strips, your backup heat within your air handler, your furnace, is in 5 kW blocks, but typically 15 or 20. So 15,000 watts or 20,000 watts, 15 kW or 20 kW. You want to try to avoid that. And one way to avoid that is go up by 2 degree increments. So set it up. When you walk by 45 minutes or an hour later and it's reached 66 degrees, knock it up a couple of more degrees. Go up to 68. That way you're utilizing your outdoor condensing unit, which is an AC in the summertime and it's a heater in the wintertime. It has a reversing switch in it that reverses the flow of the refrigerant depending on what season it is. It'll either cool or it'll heat. But when it's in the heat mode, it's using 5,000 watts. Okay? Seal in the heat. Make sure your windows and doors are properly sealed. Additionally, make sure they are shut good and tight. And I mean, if you got some of these older windows that they're single pane Maybe you have an older home that was built, say in the 70s or before. My house, for instance, I've got old single pane, multi-pane windows. They're double hung, so they're cool. They're cool, but they allow a lot of infiltration, and because they're just single pane glass, very thin, and they're great. They're cool. They're great for conversation piece, but they are terrible for winter efficiency. So, or any kind of efficiency, summer or winter. So what I've done is I've gone in and put storm windows around the outside. And they're cool. I mean, they look good. You can't find any vinyl. They're all metal storm windows, but they're powder coated white, so they look good. But that inside window, the one that I was talking about, the single pane, multi-pane, or single thickness, multi-pane, it's got a grid on it. In other words, they usually have locks on them. So I shut mine all the way. I mean, I kind of slam it, and then I lock that old lock. It's a brass lock, and that makes sure it's nice and tight. And that can help prevent cold air from entering or losing warm air. And something I've said for a long time, like talk is cheap. Talk, like I'm doing right now, it's cheap. But so is caulk, that stuff that comes out and you put a bead of it on your gaps in your window where the window meets the frame. So when in doubt, caulk. And I suggest clears, and everybody can do this. This isn't a major do-it-yourself project. This is something that you'll spend $4 or $5 on a tube of caulk, and $3 or $4 on the caulking gun, and watch a few YouTube videos, and for less than $15, your savings are going to multiply over months and into years, because this clear silicone caulk, you can't see it, so whatever paint's behind it just bleeds through, and visually anyway, and it will seal very well and keep you from losing your conditioned heat and keep from gaining cold air. So when in doubt, caulk. Weather stripping can help lock in heat and prevent cold from entering. So look at a few YouTube videos on that. Those are very helpful. Blinds and drapes or curtains can also keep drafts at bay, particularly at night. Now I use my blinds and drapes or curtains, whatever I may have, or south-facing windows during the wintertime and it's sunny. I open those suckers up and I let that passive solar heat come through those windows, and it makes a difference. If you have a cat, they understand it, because those cats will, or a dog, particularly cats, they'll find that where the light casts in from the sun, it leaves a little square on your floor. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I mean? The cat does, and it will find that and be laying in it because it's warm. And it could be, depending on the angle of the sun in the sky, it could be 20, 15 feet from the window. But if that cat, if the cat wasn't there, or a pet or whatever, might find that little warm, and it probably measures 1 foot by 1 foot. Put your hand there and you can feel the warmth. It's amazing. And that's free, folks. But then again, at night, I go in and it's not doing any good. And if the wind's blowing or something like that, it is going to cause a draft, or it's going to suck the air, the conditioned air, out of your house. So I use the blinds and the drapes and the curtains to keep that from happening. Bundle up. I mentioned dressing in layers earlier. Cover up under your favorite blanket or throw. Even better, add a cup of something warm to drink. That'll make you nice and cozy. Bundling up under a warm blanket will allow you to lower your thermostat even more, because what that blanket is doing is holding in your body temperature. And it'll separate you from the colder, perhaps unconditioned air if you've got your thermostat down. Electric blankets and electric throws those are nice. You know, they don't use much electricity at all. And boy, once you started using, so my wife and I, we have an electric blanket, and it's dual controlled. So she's got control on her side of hers, and typically she's a little more warm natured than I am. Not that it has anything to do with her age, maybe, but I'm usually a little colder, and so I keep mine going about half the night, and then finally I'll just, between that, the heat from the electric blanket, and my body heat being retained under the covers, and we got a nice quilt on top of that, I don't need anything else. And I get me through the rest of the night. About 2 or 3 in the morning, I might wake up long enough to turn it off. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, electric blankets and throws are the most cost-effective thing you can do for winter warming, and definitely more effective than the space heaters. Space heaters are fine if you're using them as zonal heat. If you're heating an area you are residing. I mean, you don't want necessarily, if you're not in the bedroom in the evening time, if you're in the living room watching some program on TV, and you want to, and your wife's in one chair and you're in the other, and the kids are, maybe nearby on a couch or whatever, put one little space heater in between you. Uses about 1,500 watts. And that'll get you through the evening. And then turn it off. Then go to bed and retreat to your wool blanket or your quilt or your electric blanket or whatever that may be. But turn that space heater off, because if you leave it there and go into your bedroom, you won't need it, right? So that's a zone. Your living room is a zone, or your den. Your bedroom's another zone. Maybe you're just can't get the chill off a little bit. So you think, I've got to do something else, at least early in the evening. So I'm going to put this little space heater here and point it towards the bed, in addition to my quilt and wool blanket or whatever else you may have. And that's a zone. But you don't have to have zones on in the other parts of the house. And then in the first thing in the morning, if you want to utilize a space heater in a different zone, the bathroom is a good place for that. And, of course, I'm not going to go a show without doing any math, so I can tell you this. Let's see. Running a 1,500 watt, and if we want to simplify the math, we divide by 1,000 to get kilowatts, right? 1.5. 1,500, 1,500 watts divided by 1,000 is 1.5 kW. And we run that space heater for 2 hours in the evening. That's what I'm talking about when you're watching a program in the evening right before you go to bed. That'll cost at 11 cents per kilowatt hour, because that's going to use 1.5 times 2. That's the time element, the hours, is 3 kWh. 3 kWh. You multiply that times 11 cents is what we charge per kilowatt hour. That's 33 cents a night. Not bad, right? And that's using it for zonal heat, temporary heat. Now, if you use that as a primary heat source, say 10 hours a day at 1,500 watts or 1.5 kW, that same little heater is going to cost $1.65 a day, or $50 a month. 2 hours is 33 cents a night. 10 hours is $1.65 a day for 10 hours. But then you take that out, that's $50 a month just for one space heater. And if you get careless and get kind of carried away and kind of forgetful, and you're running 4 of those things, well, that's pretty easy math too. That's $200 a month. So you want to be careful with those. Be prepared when winter hits eastern New Mexico. You want to monitor the conditions closely. Have hair. You don't need your hair prepared. You need your home prepared. Have your home prepared. Here's a few things I jotted down. Check your trees. Fallen tree branches are a common cause of power outage. If you see these trees growing near our power lines or facilities, call us, and we can determine the next best steps, which may include us trimming those trees. And our number here is 575-762-4466. 762-4466. Create an emergency kit. Be prepared for emergencies before they happen. Put together an emergency kit for both you, your home, and your automobile with items like flashlights, batteries, bottled water, non-perishable foods, jumper cables, emergency mobile cell phone chargers. Those are handy. And blankets. I found a good blanket. I went to Harbor Freight and free commercial for Harbor Freight. And some of those moving blankets, you put between furniture, they're pretty heavy and they're pretty cheap. So you can get I guess you can buy the equivalent of a full-size blanket or a double bed blanket. And, they don't cost so much. They don't really care about them, but you throw them in the back of in your toolbox in your truck, or you throw them in the back of your car, in the trunk. Boy, they're handy if you ever got in an emergency. We're at 21:35, so we've got about 8-9 minutes left. Know how to contact Farmers Electric. We work hard to serve you every day, and we do our best to keep the lights on. And this goes for all utilities. We are all the same. But outages can and will still happen. Now, for Farmers Electric, if you have a service interruption, call us at, this is for Clovis, this is during the workday, 575-762-4466. That's the same number. And this is a podcast, so I don't have to say it twice. You just go back and listen to it again. Fort Sumner, you want to call 575-355-2291. That'll get the girls in the Fort Sumner office. Santa Rosa, call 575-472-3971. Now, if your outage or your service interruption happens on a weekend or after hours, we've got a number specifically for that, and it is 800-445-8541. 800-445-8541. Now, we've got little refrigerator magnets that we have here at the office. Swing by any one of our offices. We should have those. And it has that 800 number on it, so you know where to find it. And then I would just suggest put it in your cell phone. That way it's always available. You can put our normal business hours in there and just call it Farmers Electric Normal, and then Farmers Electric After Hours. There's two different numbers. All right. Well, it's almost hunting season. Well, some of the hunts are upon us right now. As a matter of fact, dove hunting's going on right now. Here's a few things. I want you to stay safe when you're hunting. So take precautions to stay safe on your next hunting experience. Know the signs of a heart attack or other life-threatening condition. Have a way to get in touch with the outside world, And by the way, I think it's an iPhone 14 or newer and look into this. Don't just take my word for it, but it has a satellite phone built into it for emergencies. How nifty is that? And why did it take so long for somebody to come up with that? I thought that was cool. I heard about that in one of our safety meetings, but I think it's a iPhone 14 or newer. Don't lean on a tree stand against the utility pole. Do not fire at power lines, insulators, or conductors. That's transformers. Throw that in there. Any electrical equipment. Please don't do that. That causes a lot of problems. And we're going to bill you. And we've got cameras at our substations, so you don't want to get caught doing that. Carry a first aid kit. Now, I know our members have better sense than that, particularly our member listeners to this program. Take a first aid kit. You never know when you might need that. Check the weather in advance and be prepared. Remember that blanket I talked about, that moving blanket? Harbor Freight, they're cheap. Get a membership. They may even send you a coupon for a free one. Survey the area for potential electrical hazards. Be visible When you're hunting deer in New Mexico, you want to be wearing blaze orange. You don't want anybody to mistake you for a target. So be safe out there. I miss dove season. I haven't hunted it in a while. And my youngest son now, all my kids live in Michigan now. So guess where I'm looking at retirement? I guess if I want to see my grandkids, I might want to live near them. But I do miss dove season. My kids, my boys and I particularly, sure enjoyed dove hunting when they were growing up. And we'll have to figure out a way to do that again. This day in history, we got a little more time. We're at 26:05. August 30th, 2002, the great Ted Williams, Boston Red Sox fans know who he is, dies. He's the last player to hit 400 in a season. There was some weird thing. I don't know why I remember this, but his kids were fighting over his head. I'm not making it up. It's like they were going to do cryogenics on his head, and one child wanted the head in their possession. The other one, I don't know, folks. Ted Williams was one of my dad's favorite players of all time. Obviously, he was easy to like, and he was a great American, and he actually served in the Army Air Corps in World War II. I think that's partly why my dad had so much respect for him. He was willing and able to walk away from the game for 2 seasons, I believe. And it was in the prime of his life, his playing career. But, yeah, he died on this date, August 30th, 2002. On this day in 1972, one of my favorite actresses, Cameron Diaz, not my favorite actress for her politics, but for her roles in, like, for instance, The Mask is one of my favorite movies. She and Jim Carrey. That was a good movie. But she's also well known for her work in Shrek and Something About Mary and others. But she's pretty to boot. On this day in history, in 1963, kind of going backwards now, the official hotline was established between Washington and Moscow. On August 30th, 1963, John F. Kennedy becomes the first U.S. president to have a direct phone call to the Kremlin in Moscow. The hotline was designed to facilitate communication between the president and the Soviet premier. And I guess they wanted it in case things kind of got a little heated. And they thought maybe they should have a conversation before we start annihilating each other. But I always pictured, I don't know why, but I pictured this red phone sitting on the desk of in the Oval Office. I don't know if it's red or not, but anytime I hear the word hotline, I think of a red phone. This day in history in 1980, a young and basically unknown American singer-songwriter, Christopher Cross, had a hit ballad called Sailing, which it's a great song. If you don't know Christopher Cross, look him up. He is unbelievable talent. But it reached the Billboard top of the Billboard chart on August 30th, 1980, on this day. So that's a while ago. That's 45 years ago? That is crazy. It's hard to believe. Thank you for listening to Morning Buzz with the Energy Guys. I'll be back next week with episode 12. I don't know what we're going to talk about just yet, but I can tell you this. Morning Buzz with the Energy Guy is the only podcast awarded the Energy Star label. Thanks for listening.